Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on the first of a series of meetings between tonight and the 9th of June and the 23rd of June on the subject of heating your home without costing the earth. So Gary and Colin from InstaGroup will be making a presentation on insulation.
So I'm from InstaGroup. I've worked for InstaGroup since I was about 17, so I'm now 44, so a long time. My only company, didn't have a passion for insulation when I first started there, but have now. You're all aware of energy prices and fuel bills going up, and ultimately, how do you do and save money to basically, keep our energy down? So we are a company that has been around.
Yeah, just tell me when it's the next.
That's fine. For over 40 years, as I said. Our core services is our insulation, boilers, anything to do with heating and ultimately keeping a warm home. We have a network of installing companies as well. So we're a system designer. We have our own core production department which covers the whole of the south, but we also sell our materials and our products and services out to other companies around the whole of England and also into other countries. So we have flooring departments in such areas as South Africa, Australia, into other sort of countries around those areas. Not just that, we have a tech team that monitors what we do and everybody that we sell to. We're really sort of privileged to have that. It's been part of our core business. People worry about having insulation put into their homes and how it's fitted. What we offer is that support that it is fitted correctly through everybody that we deal with and sell to. So our company is based on that principle. It was a family built company when it first started. It's evolved into a bigger company which obviously carries out a lot of measures for people through able to pay routes, grant funded routes, social housing routes, and we can talk about that a little bit more as we get into maybe Q&As. So as I said, first fabric approach. You save a lot of energy by heat escaping. Well, sorry, let's start again. Your heat escapes from your property. How do you save and stop that happening? So loft insulation, I'm going to start from the top. Heat rises. So if you have no loft insulation in your property, the first place it's going to go is straight out of the top of your roof. So you create a layer of insulation on a ceiling bed, and that will then prevent heat escaping into your loft area, suppresses it into your livable area. The next place it will go is through your cavity walls, if you have any. Now, not all houses have cavity walls. Some will have external wall insulation. In both cases, the heat will then dissipate to those areas. So you will ultimately save money and energy and keep your house warmer, not have to use your heating as much. You still will use heating because everything revolves around heating going into the house, but not as much. And therefore your boiler doesn't have to go on as many times, and you save money by having these measures installed. So if we look at loft insulation to start with, now we all live in all different types of housing, so these savings are up to these annual savings. Now with any property, this is only a guide, because depending on how your house is built initially, the fabric of that building, depending on whether it contains a really nice insulated block on the internal leaf or not. I'm not going to go into building detail too much because that will confuse you, but these are guides as to how much you could save potentially in each of your house type every year just by having insulation installed. So that, again, these will all be slides just taking through each of our measures, our core measures. If you push to the next one. So again, cavity wall insulation. Again, some really good guides to how much, again, you could save. If you combined both and you needed both within the house, and let's just take a detached house as it's the first one, there could be a combined saving of up to £1,000 a year just by insulating your house. What we do in that process, and this will be a process within external wall insulation as well, is we will carry out a survey. Now our surveys, predominantly when the industry was 20, 30 years ago would have all been free because there was lots of housing stock that wasn't insulated. A lot of times now we carry out lots of free surveys because that is part of the process through eco schemes and free schemes that we hope to capture people like yourselves within. We sometimes have to charge a fee if there is a long distance, which is refunded back to you if the measure is there to install that you've asked us to come and look at. But what we pride ourselves within our survey is we don't waste time. We do whole house surveys. So we look at the whole house and what we can improve for you within that sort of visit. So we're not coming out just to look at cavity wall insulation. We might look at windows, for example, if they're there. We might look at other measures like your boiler, which might be 10, 15 years old, and we might be able to get you some funding with that compared with another measure that you were initially looking for. So we pride ourselves on our service, everything that we do, hence why we're 40 years of age, and you won't find many companies out there offering these products of our age, basically. They've been and gone, or they're not around ever in the past. Operation, we look at our installing network of people that do this for us. We employ the best. Most of our installers have got at least 10 years of experience with us, if not with other companies before joining us. So we offer you pride in what we do as well. If you can move on, please. Again, just some little numbers on external wall insulation. This is probably, again, if you're trying to pay for it yourself, it would be very expensive, but it's probably the most noticeable insulation type that we fit nowadays. It's a housing stock that's not been looked after very well. It was built pre-1930s predominantly, but can go all the way up to today's dates where people have put solid walls into houses. They don't retain heat very well. They take a lot of time to warm up, and then as soon as you turn your heating off, it all goes out again. So anyone living in a solid house would notice that they're always putting heat into the house. They go away on a holiday, they come back, it's almost freezing cold, and it takes time to warm up again. As soon as we put insulation on that type of property, people inside that house notice it almost day one, day two. They're almost, everybody that we speak to, everybody that we deal with in that scenario. So it is a more expensive measure, but again, funding is available out there for people which can qualify in a lot of what we do, and we can talk about some of the routes that are available. If you want to move on. Sure. So, next steps. It says contact local installer. We're your local installer. We'd like to deal with everyone. We have a Trustmark database. That's a quality assurance of what we do. So everything we do gets guaranteed, and then it gets a Trustmark lodgement. It's a way of validating quality workmanship and making sure that you're dealing with a quality installer or business. It says options, and I'll combine both options and funding. We try always in what we do to try to find funding routes for everybody. We look for local authorities that want to access funding. We run schemes for the government that is based on energy suppliers that need to spend their obligation every year in a quota. So we're coming to the end of what is called an Eco 3 scheme. That will end very soon, but an Eco 4 scheme, the government are writing that at the moment. It's late. It should have been out a couple of months ago. That will capture a lot of people, and it's open to that whole house approach of what can we do. Can we bring up band measures 2 widths, maybe from a D to a B, maybe an E to a C. Other areas we've got, local authorities can access decarbonisation funds, which every local authority is eligible. So if you have councillors around, push them towards trying to push for bids to get people's housing stocks helped in those areas where they don't have to ultimately pay anything. It's all fed by government, and you are able to claim that money. But people don't do it, and we try to encourage local authorities to do that so that we can help you free, and ultimately you don't have to put any money out of your pocket sometimes. And I say sometimes there's small contributions, but they are minimal compared to the measures and how much it costs to do some things. So contact your local council. I say that to you as well as us. Try to push them towards things. I say recommended installers, if you've got family, friends that are out of our area, then please come to us and we'll find you a route for those as well. Grants and advice, we're happy to take calls, we're happy to give you advice over the phone and, you know, push you towards the right direction if you're looking for something. Want to move on? And we're up to any questions, so do you want to come in at this point? This is Colin Millard. So part of what InstaGroup do, just let that go through. Part of what InstaGroup do is I just spoke about a survey and a whole house approach. So Colin heads up our surveying department in this area and many other areas. So I'll let him just speak a little bit about what we do as a survey and how we try to help people a little bit about that. Is that okay? Do you want him?
Yeah.
I think
get the mic on, so give me a minute.
1 second, because I'll just pull that.
He's broken it, is now.
No, I haven't.
He's broken the mic, by the way.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello, I'm Colin. If you have any questions about what Gary said already, or you're not understanding about what measures we offer, please say now. We'll go through it before I start talking about the process of what we go through to make sure we're getting the right measures for your home. Because the worst thing we can do as an installer for insulation is to put the wrong stuff in your home, because that's going to cause you problems long term, and of course with the property. So first and foremost, yes please.
So I'm fortunate enough to live in a 1980s house. It's got cavity wall insulation, PVC windows and good loft insulation. What would you suggest is the next best thing to look at to improve
Your EPC rating? So are you looking to improve the EPC rating?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So probably we would be suggesting, if your cavity walls are fully insulated and your loft is to standard, probably the next route we'll take you down is probably renewables somewhere along the line. So probably looking at PV or something like that, because in terms of insulation, there's probably not much more we can do for you. You've probably done as much as you can do.
Okay.
But to improve EPC's ratings, definitely look at renewables, because they will push up the EPC rating quite quickly. Just on EPCs, does everybody understand what an EPC is? Yeah? Good. Okay, fine. Any more questions?
Windows and doors.
How do you mean?
Well, this gentleman was saying what could be improved in his house.
Yeah.
Perhaps checking the quality of...
You say you have PVC windows already, so I would anticipate you probably have A-rated glass within those windows. How old are they, roughly?
Yeah, that's a good point. Most of them are not, and I'm aware that as and when the seals
Yep.
die,
Yep.
I'm looking out to replace those.
Yep.
I was thinking also about little drafts of the house construction is reasonable, but I know I've found a few little
Holes.
drafts and
Yeah.
holes, and I've been plugging those up.
But just to go back on the glass is very important. If it's not an A-rated glass, you will lose heat through those quite quickly. So again, something worth looking at. Yeah. Any other questions?
I work for a renewable energy installer, and we're working on a house at the moment that's got solid walls, and on the EPC, well, through our calculations, that is leaking heat enormously. Are there any funds available that we could offer to the customers that might allow them?
At this moment in time, no, but there will be. It would certainly be worth, sorry, I'll come to you in a minute. It would certainly be worth you talking to us maybe within the next 4 to 6 weeks. We'll have a better idea of what the funding is available and how we apply for it. And then we can see whether your particular home that you're renovating could qualify. Yeah?
My son's just moving house and he's got good loft insulation, but he's got these small dormer windows in the main bedrooms. How do you insulate those?
Okay, so this has always been a bit of a mute subject. Are the dormers tile hung on the outside, or are they timber clad? Yeah. Okay. Gary, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. It's very difficult to insulate them internally. We would be looking to remove the timber cloud on the outside and to put external wall insulation in its place. That is the best way we consider to insulate dormer windows.
And on the roof section, just tile?
It's very, very difficult because I doubt whether there's going to be some sort of entrance into there internally for us. Because obviously what we would like to do in that area, that space, would be to put standard loft insulation.
Yeah, there's not a lot of space there.
No, exactly. So it's just a point, isn't it, effectively? So we're not going to be able to get our types of insulation into that area. But around the dormers themselves, then we can certainly put external wall insulation on there for you.
There's a question at the back.
Yeah, I might be being really thick. I know what cavity wall insulation is, but I don't actually know the detail of what external
No problem,
insulation
no
is.
problem.
So you can explain that.
Absolutely. So as Gary said, some homes, the vast majority of homes built before 1930 were not built with a cavity. Does everybody understand what a cavity wall is? Yeah? Okay. So these homes don't have a cavity. They are effectively just one wall.
Yeah.
Okay? So what we do is we use two types of potential insulation which fix to the external of your wall. Okay? So they will be EPS, which is expanded polystyrene, comes in a thickness of 90 mil thick board, which we attach to the outside of your wall.
And then do you apply some sort of render?
Yes, then we render finish it. There is other types of finish, but predominantly it's a rendered finish. Okay, so you've got expanded polystyrene, which is one type of insulant, but we also use mineral fibre bats, which are a bit thicker, and the U value is slightly better. But we commonly use expanded polystyrene. So it's a board that's stuck effectively to the outside of the wall and rendered finish to finish off.
It can also be finished in other ways. So we do sometimes have to keep a context of the streets. So there are other options to render. We say render as a standard because that's the cheapest way to finish your house. There are pebble dash, there are brick slips which will extensively make the project dearer. Sometimes that's what you need to do to fit with the street, and again that's where I talk about those funding routes that help, because these are houses that they want to keep in the same fashion. Also non-traditional properties, so there's older property types, concrete sort of walls or panels. These are sort of classed as non-traditionals but also can be installed with external wall insulation or treated with a cavity wall insulation. Nowadays we have received a certification at InstaGroup that allows us to now fill some of those prefab buildings that probably shouldn't be up but are. And if they are lived in, why should they be missed? So again, we found a system to fill those. So again, we're always trying to evolve and help everybody in this country where we predominantly work. But yeah, back to the external wall. Just to add, there are finishes other than render if it is deemed necessary.
Going back to Gary's point earlier on about quality, with wall insulation, everything comes with a 25-year guarantee. Okay, so obviously from Insta's point of view, we don't really want to be putting something on the wall or in a wall that in 2 years' time one of you is going to ring us up and say we've not done it properly. And that's what our guarantee is there to do. That is saying to you guys, we believe that what we've done here has a lifespan of 25 years of good quality service. So that quality point is very, very, very important. As I say, we won't do anything unless we can guarantee it properly for you.
I've got cavity walls, but the house was built in the early 80s, and evidently there's a new, different kind of polystyrene wall that's used now, and the two can't be mixed. So half our walls have come out, so we're stuck with half-empty cavities that we can't refill because the system's changed.
Okay, so just on that point, so again, because we want to guarantee the work, we would be probably looking at extraction of the existing cavity wall insulation that you have. Okay, again, obviously we're talking about cost here, but we need to extract what's in there and then reapply new insulation so we can apply for the 25-year guarantee for you. It can be done, but obviously it's the level of cost with the extraction and then the refill.
Would it be cheaper to put external?
So to get a 25-year guarantee for external wall insulation, if you've got a cavity wall, you must fill the cavity wall as well. So you're almost effectively paying twice. Yeah, so that's really not an option. Well, not in my opinion. The better option is to extract and then refill cavity wall insulation. Anything else?
I must say on that one, just quickly, if you did have a guarantee with that, then, and it was within your deed paperwork, you would be, as long as it's a SEGA guarantee, that's the only one in my span, and I have been there a long time, as I mentioned right at the beginning, that is something that I would refer you back to. And if it is within the time span of 25 years from the installation date, like
No, it's 40 years.
40 years ago.
No.
No worries. But back to the guarantee for 1 second. Colin touched on it. That guarantee is so important because if, for instance, the group were to go out of business in 50 years and that was it for us, that 25-year guarantee covers you when we're not here. It's a government guarantee. Again, I've spoken a lot about government. So your inspections are free. Your remediation of any bad workmanship is free. And any internal damage cost to your property is free. Up to that £10,000 mark that the guarantee covers, which probably is more than adequate for anything. So it is something that we really pride ourselves back onto, with being able to offer guarantees to everything that we do. Lofts are slightly different. I do want to make that point. Lofts were never guaranteed, and we actually made it part of our systems 2 years ago to actually offer and be able to offer a 2-year guarantee for lofts. But some people think it's still dangerous to offer a guarantee because you can ultimately, as people, get in your own loft, and you can cause your own disruption to the work that we carry out. But we tend to think that by being able to offer that, you wouldn't do that. So we even went to the extent of getting that into a guarantee method so that we could guarantee lofts, which are something that anybody, any trade could mess up for us. But we take it that the customers we deal with value our work, so we put that into our business too.
So I have a question. There's one we were talking about earlier before the meeting started. There was a lady who sent a question to the Heat email. Unfortunately, she can't be here tonight. But she said they're looking at loft insulation at the moment, and they have the choice of spray foam insulation and traditional mineral wool type insulation. And we said that we would talk about the pros and cons of both.
Yeah.
types.
So foam insulation has been around for a little while, a very long time, in certainly cavity wall aspects. It was an original form of cavity wall insulation. It's no longer used. Remember that word, no longer used. It degraded in cavity walls. It has to be mixed in a certain way to form and to solidify to the right, basically to make that foam not evolve and basically disappear, basically. Now, lofts. People phone us up with problems about lofts and say, I've got foam in my loft and it's sprayed through the rafters, and what do I do? It's a problem because you shouldn't have it there in the first place. You just shouldn't have it there in the first place. It has no benefit. There's more modern methods of insulating that roof timber structure if you needed to, and I again talk about needed to. If you aren't living in your loft and it's not a livable space, insulating the pitch of your roof has no benefit at all. It saves you no money whatsoever. Because the insulation that is actually saving you money is on the ceiling, like I mentioned before. That's what suppresses your heat into your livable area. So anything going above that, unless you live in it and you have a staircase that leads up to that pitch, no benefit at all to insulating above that ceiling line. But even then, if you put foam in it and you lived in it, you then have a couple of other problems. it destroys any membranes that you have in that pitch of the roof. So often you have to replace the roof itself, the tiles. If it's not got a membrane, it's stuck to them, ruins those. If it's got a membrane, it tears. It makes your house unsellable as well. People don't know that until they come to sell the house, because of those problems I've just forementioned, where basically your house, your roof structure can't actually be guaranteed in its own right because it's got all this stuff stuck to it. It can't breathe. Most foams...
Sorry, can you still get that then? Can you still get the foam?
Yeah, I don't like to talk ill of anyone, but yes, you can. Foam is used on, successfully on underfloors of park homes.
Yeah.
Successfully, I say, because it's a closed cell product, so it has its breathability under the floor. There's air environment which allows it to breathe. It's a closed cell product, so when it's sprayed within rafters, it takes up all the air movement, and therefore it's against wood. Wood needs to be able to breathe, and it can't breathe. So now you get wet rot into your timbers. It can happen 1 year, it could happen never, but it could happen, and that's why you can't sell your house until you've had it removed. So, in answer to your question, should you have spray foam in your loft? No. If you've got it in your cavities, it's probably degraded to the point where we talk about extraction again, and we need to put new material in and get it back to a state where it's going to save you money, because it's probably now not worth it in that state. So again, we look at funding. Can you get your local authorities to help you in those places where you can access it as people? And many of you probably could in the audience today. So ultimately it's about making your house warmer, tighter, and adding ventilation, which is something, again, I think, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so
Players?
so just to come back to the foam issue, most people do not know that mortgage lenders will not mortgage against a house that has spray foam in their roof. They will not offer. There might be one or two, but the major lenders will not lend against it. So if you're trying to sell your house and a surveyor comes in and finds spray foam in there, it's very unlikely the purchaser will be able to get a mortgage against that until that's gone. Sorry, Karen.
Yeah, because we were doing a roof recently, and they had a roof that went onto a pitch roof that went into a flat roof. They had a leak on the flat roof, but they had to remove some of the tiles in the pitch roof. But because all of the back of the pitch roof was foam, they had to replace the whole
lot
side of the roof.
Yeah.
Again,
There you go.
A typical example of so much cost when you think you're doing a good thing. So just remember, unless you're living in that space, you don't need to insulate above it.
Golden rule of insulation, whether it be loft, external cavity wall, golden rule is when you insulate, you must ventilate. Because if you do not ventilate, just imagine when you get out of the bath or out of the shower. When you jump out of the bath or the shower and you wrap yourself in a towel, after a certain amount of time, your body is going to sweat. That is exactly what happens with a house. Think about insulation, particularly wall insulation, as a blanket. You're wrapping your house in a blanket. If you do not allow that space to gather some air somewhere, it's going to sweat. And going back to the spray foam is notorious for blocking eaves, blocking vents in roofs. No air going through there. At some point, as Gary says, that is going to start to sweat. We are going to get dry or wet rot in that roof. And that's why spray foam, in our opinion, should not be used.
So for a loft space, you would do what I did, which is
Mineral full.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for those that may have a room in roof, as we call them, and you want to insulate it better, and let's just say it's a chalet bungalow, which some of you may live in, and you might want to bring in a builder to do something room in roof style with that pitch of roof. You would initially take that plasterboard down, you'd then put a membrane in and maybe a fixed PIR board or something similar, re-plasterboard that up, So you've got your membrane, your gap, your air movement, and then back in, and there you go. You've got a nicely insulated pitch, no foam involved. And that would be as simple as it got. All guaranteeable, all serviceable from inside to out, and that would be it. Nice and easy.
So just to come away from the fabric that we do, obviously there are avenues of funding that we would like to try and help you achieve for your insulation measures. Has anybody used any funding measures here before? Does anybody know how to do it? Does anybody know how much is available? Potentially. Thought not. Okay. Okay. So, probably from July, because the new scheme is just about to start. The new scheme is called Eco4, as Gary's already mentioned. It looks at two things for qualification. It looks at the whole house fabric. Does it need insulation? What does it need to improve its energy ratings? And two, once we discover those and whether it's possible in that property, it then looks at the people living in that house. Okay, so there will be a set of criteria that we have to follow where, you know, it could well be, I'll give you for instance, if there's somebody living in the house that's older than 65, they would qualify. Or is there somebody in the house that has a medical condition, and there'll be a set of medical conditions which would qualify that particular person, subject to the house needing certain measures. So they're the sort of things that would help you achieve funding. Now, in terms of cavity wall insulation and loft insulation, generally, the previous schemes have contributed up to 100%, but we think this new scheme is predominantly going to be looking at external wall insulation. Okay, there is no way the government is going to fund external wall insulation 100%. Okay, let me give you some examples. An average loft install that we carry out costs about £800. The average cavity wall install that we do costs about £1,100. The average external wall insulation install we do costs £12,000. Okay, so there's no way the government is going to fund 100% of external wall insulation, and that's where we believe this next scheme will go. But it will fund, we believe, up to 60 to 70% of it. Now that is a massive chunk that people need to take advantage of, because once it's gone, that funding will never come back. It never does. Unless a government comes in and says in its manifesto and actually delivers on a manifesto, we are going to supply £11 billion worth of funding for anybody that needs insulation in their homes and will pay for it. It's never going to happen. So there will be a contribution, but if you're going to get 70% towards something and you qualify, you need to exploit it, really. So from July, that funding we believe will come available to us, and we will be able to help you access it. So all you would need to do is to come to us. We will take you through the process step by step. Does the house qualify? What do you need? Then we start looking at the occupants. Do we qualify? Yes. So we tick those two boxes. Then we know that we can activate that funding for you. We'll go and do the install, and then we don't get paid until you tell us, or you tell the government, that you're happy with the work that we've done. So we don't get any money. We'll come and do the work, but we will not get any money until you sign off to say, yes, we're satisfied. And that's when we can activate the fund for payment. Okay, so that is a scheme that becomes, as I say, available probably from July. It might be August because we're already late. But yeah, there are other schemes that people like Mark may, and the council may be able to help you, like the decarbonisation fund, where the local council can get probably up to £5 million of funding over a period of 2 to 3 years to help homeowners. You have to be a homeowner. Okay, so the first scheme, Eco4, you have to be a homeowner. You have to own that house. Okay, decarbonisation fund slightly different, because if you live in social housing, for instance, you can still apply for the funding. But that relies on councils actually making that application to the government. Whereas Eco4, the government are telling contractors like ourselves, the money is there if you can find the right people for the criteria. Okay, so they're funds that are available, will be available July, August time, and we'll do it for you. All you've got to tell us is you need help, and then we'll find a way. If we can find a way to fund it, we will. Because at the end of the day, yes, we want to make money. We're a commercial business. We want to make money. That's our job. But at the same time, we signed up to be a leader in carbon reduction. So we need to look at that as well from a business point of view, because that's only good for ourselves if we can help people reduce their carbon. Okay, so they're fundings that, you know, as I say, one phone call could probably lead, not in your hand, but could lead to thousands of pounds worth of funding coming your way.
Just to touch on that sort of, if Colin was mentioning 70% as an example, if you went back to the slides on figures and you looked at how much you're going to save every year, and potentially you've got a project of, let's just say, £12,000, and out of your pocket you're taking 3 out of your savings, but you're saving £1,000 a year, and you intend to be there for the rest of your life. Is it not a no-brainer?
This is very true.
I'll give you that one. For most, is it not a no-brainer? That you are going to firstly do 2 things. You're going to take your bandwidth up. Naturally, that makes your house more valuable. So if you're selling it, if you're leaving it to somebody else, you've added value to it. Property never really devalues. So anything that you're doing now to make that more energy efficient, if you look in the market today and you look at 2 houses side by side, one was an E, one was a B, you probably got 40, 50, 60 grand difference in price just there alone.
Good point Gary makes, actually. Is anybody here a landlord? Okay, so next year, for all rented properties, there are going to be government guidelines of what your EPC ratings must be to enable you to rent your properties out. If you do not rent,
When I was walking down, I thought, this is going to be bad news for now.
yeah, I think,
It's an opportunity.
yeah, absolutely.
To look at how can people help you. Like, landlords aren't alone either. They are eligible for funds, and you just got, as I say, what we're trying to make you aware of as people is that there's personal areas that you can explore, but there's also pressures that you can apply to people you know about these funds that are available, like Colin mentioned, for social housing. If you're in one of those types of housing stock, you know, what are your local authority doing for you? And if you've got a voice, use it, because if you can get them to put in a bid for a decarb fund to help not just you but your neighbour and the next one along, say. At the moment, these councils don't know what they're actually available to get in a lot of cases. We have to do a lot of education in pushing towards them and saying, actually, you are available for this. You can put a bid in for this. But they don't know until we tell them. So, but we can't do these everywhere, and we can't speak to everyone. And sometimes doors get shut in our face when we try and speak to people because they haven't got an energy officer or someone that cares in their council. So maybe they should, because then we can help more people. And as I say, funding is our bread and butter of helping people. We have an able to pay market. We spoke about that. We've got half sort of spoken to the fact that there is some contributions with funding as well. But not everybody is eligible, and those that are really eco-green and they want to really jazz up their house, you mentioned yourself in our earlier chat, it's a passion as well, so they will invest in that because they want to, because they think that they can help the planet or themselves in their own minds, they're doing something good. So, as I say, we've touched on a lot of funding. There might be a few of you out there that aren't going to be eligible for funding, but that doesn't mean that you should be excluded from this journey in regards to making your house warmer and etc., as we've talked about.
Yeah, just to wrap up on the funding, governments, not just this government, but multiple governments over the years, are very good at saying to people in public, there's £20 billion to be spent on energy efficiency. And they're very good at saying, when the press catch on that not hardly any money had been spent, that the government like to say, well, we put it out there, but people didn't use it. Well, people didn't use it because they didn't know how to get to it. That's the problem. For instance, I just won a £11 million bid for Surrey County Council. But had we not spent 2 or 3 months going through the process with them, they wouldn't have bothered doing it. We have to pressurise people. We have to tell people, there's a train. So we have to tell people that it's there. Help is there. You're just one phone call away really from activating it, and allow us to help you through that journey, because we can.
So is there any other questions from anybody? Because we're pretty much out of time.
How much should you have of the insulation in your roof space then?
How much would you have in
Yeah,
depth?
what's
So
the ideal
standard
amount?
depth is now anything from 270 above. We would always assess your loft to just ensure that there's ventilation above that nominal amount of insulation we're going to put in. So again, we're talking ventilation versus insulation. It's like a seesaw. You want a level playing field. If you insulate too much, it goes like that. If you haven't got any insulation, we're on that side and it's freezing cold. Okay, so we want to be there. Insulation with ventilation. So we would assess 270 minimum, can be up to 400 mil if your loft is really high. Any others? That's fine, we can hold on. I come closer. Okay, so the question was, how do we know if the cavity wall insulation is degraded? So we talked about surveys. We go into a property, we carry cameras. So we'll carry out a boroscope inspection. That will determine, firstly, failure points. You will sometimes be alerted to cavity wall insulation that's failed because in your house you might have some streaming condensation or a corner of air of your house which is mouldy all the time. Furniture can cause that if it's rammed up against walls. Again, airflow, we talked about airflow. We need airflow everywhere. But if you've got areas of your property that don't look quite right, and you've got cavity wall insulation and something's just going on there that you can't work out, could be insulation missing, could be degraded insulation. If it's that bad that we talked about foam a little while ago and it's disintegrated to the point, ultimately you need someone like our surveying department to come into your property, check all out. As I say, we can do thermal imagery as well to check those sort of things out to see what is happening.
So just on that point, the process of checking the cavity is to drill a hole into the mortar line on the elevation, put the camera in, we'll see what's in there, camera comes out, and then we seal the hole, and we'll repeat that around the property. Generally one hole per elevation, but we can sometimes need some more, but drill hole in and then camera.
Any others?
Yeah. What about floors? Our house is air bricks all around the house, and I always think the floors, Colin.
Okay, so again, in my honest opinion of that is that there are people out there with insulation companies that will say that they can put an insulation bed on your floor. That involves taking up your floor because it's ultimately a subfloor. You might have wooden or carpet. So disruption to start with. They would then put some insulation on top and then put your floor back. I don't believe that is really a solution. Your best solution for that type of thing is underfloor heating. And I'm going to be completely honest with you there. If you're going to rip up your floor to actually put insulation down, put the pipes in, put and underfloor heating, and it's as simple as that. If you've got a solid wall house, in that scenario, then we would insulate below the DPC line, which would then kill the cold bridge coming underneath. Okay? You can. It's hard to do that with a cavity wall house because you'd naturally have a step below the DPC line. See what I'm saying? Because you're not going up.
I'm just surprised how cold it is. I mean, because they built like it's not an old.
If you've got a cellar,
no,
it's slightly different. Sometimes when it's, as we call on stilts, like 5, you know, a couple of feet, 3 foot
No, it's just
up, then sometimes you can get underneath and insulate. Again,
Yeah.
a bit like a park home, mobile home, you can actually go under those and insulate the floor from the underside. If we've all holidayed, and you know, and they can be freezing cold and thin, and there are ways to even insulate those.
But is it unusual what I'm experiencing then, or is it perhaps?
It's
it
not
just feels like the floor is cold, and that's because the hot air is
Again, what do you know about your property? Has it got insulation, cavity wall insulation?
hasn't got cavity wall. It's cavities, but it's not insulated.
There's half your problem straight away.
Yeah.
So we've talked about that. So ultimately, insulate your cavity walls, make sure they're suitable to be done. Have an inspection from, say, our team. They would determine that. You fill your cavity walls, and you will take 90% of that away.
So just on the floor insulation, we don't do it.
No.
And the reason we don't do it is because we can't guarantee it for 25 years.
It's a concrete floor.
Again, concrete floors are just beds of concrete, so it's not normally as common to have a cold floor in that type of building. Again, your heat will disperse up, out, generally not down. Okay, if you've got a floor space below, where then heat can dissipate, like this gentleman's speaking about, yes, you can be susceptible to cold floors, especially Victorian Edwardian houses and things like that. But as I say, underfloor heating, that will cure the rest of your problem. But
maybe just
cavity wall insulation is missing.
that was
Huge.
what was going to lead to was doing the walls.
Yeah,
Just
huge problem
stop
there,
me
and
thinking the floors
that would solve the majority of your issues. Any others before we run out of time?
Have you found that insurance companies take into account whether or not your house has been insulated?
Insurance companies, no. Ultimately, the only time that an insurance company would be interested is if there's an issue, whilst at the sale purpose. So, for example, if there's an ongoing damp issue and there was a rectification problem that needed to be going on, and it was found that there was a connection between insulation and that problem, and that would affect insurance purposes and things like that. But ultimately, again, if you're with a reputable company like we are, and you offer a guarantee that covers any eventuality, you would never be in that problem.
Okay? Everyone done? Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you
Thank you very
very
much. Thank you.
very much.
I'll leave that with you.